I'm going to demonstrate the use of the darken blend mode using this wonderful capture that I saw on Facebook one day, and it caught my eye. But when I looked at it, I thought, this photographer, and I wish I could credit him or her. Unfortunately, I just saw the image and saved it without capturing his name or her name. So all I can tell you is this came from the metaverse, and it's not mine, but it's a wonderful image. So congratulations to the photographer that took it. But when I saw this, I thought, this is a wonderful photo, but if I were making this image, from a blank canvas, if I were painting it, I wouldn't put all the interesting stuff in the middle. I'd kind of spread it out. So let me show you how you can just play around with the composition like that using Photoshop. As with anything in Photoshop, there's more than one way to do any one thing. But the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take these birds and I'm going to move them over from the top center to the top left. And to do that, we'll use the content-aware fill tool in Photoshop, which is marvelous. So to do the content-aware fill tool, first I have to identify the part of the image I want to fill, and it's where the birds are here. So I'm going to take my lasso tool, this one. And I could just circle all the birds, but what I found is I don't get as good a result as if I do a little more selective selection of those birds. So I'm just going to take my lasso and I'm going to circle these birds individually or small groups. Now that I have a selection, to add to that selection, I'll hold down the Shift key. You can see there's a little plus sign that shows up by my lasso when I do that. Once I start dragging, I can let go of the Shift key and that plus sign will stay there. And when I want to start a new edition, I'll hold down the Shift key again. I can just go ahead and hold it down the whole time. It doesn't really tax me very much to hold that Shift key down. Here I'll circle this little group all together. And finally I'll circle that last bird. All right, so now I have all those birds selected. And what I'll do is I will press the Command J on the Mac, which would be Control J on the PC. That does what we call a jump of the currently selected layer, which was the background layer. And since I had a selection when I did that, it'll only copy the part of the active layer, which was the background layer, that was selected. So if I turn off the visibility of the background layer, you can see now on this new layer that's called Layer 1, and let me relabel that birds so it's a little clearer what's on that layer, that now we have a layer containing just those birds. Now, my next step is to let the content-aware fill part of Photoshop generate replacement pixels for the area where those birds are, so that it looks as if the birds are not there. So what I'd like to do is take that that pixel layer, the birds layer, and turn it back into a selection. And to do that, I'll hold down the Command on the Mac, which would be Control on the PC, and click on that layer. Now you can see we have our marching ants back. I'll move the selection down to the background layer. I'll unhighlight the birds layer, or make it not visible, and I'll go up to the menu at the top of the Photoshop screen, click on Edit Content Aware Fill. Okay, what this will do is it will take me into a little workspace here where it'll show me the content aware fill. I click OK, and now I have a brand new layer. You can see over in the layer stack it's labeled background copy. I can go ahead and press Command or Control D to deselect, and if I turn the visibility of that background copy layer on and off, I can see, in fact, let me unhighlight or make the background layer not visible. Now you can see that what's on this new layer, let's just call it No Birds, has pixels that make it appear that the birds are no longer there. There's a little bit of smearing here that I could clear up and fine-tune why don't I go ahead and do that? I'm going to zoom in a little bit, Command or Control plus. See the the outline here. All I have to do is take my clone stamp and turn the flow down a little bit and just clone some pixels up over that area to kind of blend it in a little better. Right, the same thing happened over here. All right, there we go. We fixed up those defects pretty quickly. So now we have a layer that makes those birds disappear. We still have our birds layer. And now I can select the Move tool at the top left of the tool panel there. And I'm going to drag those birds over. Now I've got the birds where I want them, but it doesn't look so good because the sky surrounding those birds doesn't match the new part of the sky where the birds are now. Here's where our blend modes come in. So we can see over in the layer stack now, I have the birds layer highlighted and the blend mode is set to normal. I'll click on that blend mode, move it down to darken. Bingo. Now what that darken blend mode is doing is taking the darker of the pixels on the birds layer or the layers below and showing those as the result. Since the birds are darker, sorry, let me start that again. Since the pixels of the birds on this birds layer are darker than what's underneath, we can look, the birds are shown. The sky pixels on this birds layer, and let me set it back to normal, those sky pixels surrounding the birds are lighter than what's beneath. So when I set that blend mode to darker, those pixels are not selected for display. Rather, the underlying pixels are selected. So nothing very magical about that, but without any careful masking, we have a perfect blend of those birds where we've moved them to, thanks to blend mode, thanks to the mathematical pixel by pixel, in fact, subpixel by subpixel, channel by channel blending in Photoshop, which is what, of course, the blend modes do. All right, now let's do the same thing with the boat. So I'll go down to my background layer. I'm going to take my lasso and I'm going to lasso not only the boat, but the reflection of the fisherman there in the boat. So I'll just make sure I've got it all lassoed there. Looks like I got a little too close right toward the bow there, so I'll hold down the Shift key to make it the plus sign and add a little more to the selection. There we go. That looks like a pretty nice selection. And once again, with the background layer selection, I'll jump the layer, Command or Control J. So now I have a layer with called Layer 1 that has only the fisherman in the boat. And let's relabel Layer 1 boat with fisherman. All right, and let's play that same game again. I'm going to get my Move tool. I'll move that over a little bit. I'll set the blend mode to darken. And now we've got the fisherman where we want it. But what we forgot to do was take the fisherman out of the background layer. So let's undo that. I'll press Command or Control Z to move it back. I'm going to do a Command or Control click on the boat with fisherman layer to reselect the area where that is. And let's try the same trick again. It's not going to work, but I just want to show you why it doesn't work. So with the background layer selected, with the background layer highlighted, so it's the active layer, and the selection made around the boat with the fisherman, I'll once again go up to my menu, Edit, Content Aware Fill, and click OK. And I'll hit Command D. Now, what I find unsatisfying about that is that the nice texture of the water wasn't picked up by content-aware fill and filled in properly. So let me zoom in a little bit, Command or Control plus, and you can see it's where we have the content-aware fill there. It's just kind of blurred it instead of giving us a very nice water texture. Okay, so it was a good try. It didn't work. I'll show you a different technique that will work. Let me do a Command or Control 0 to zoom out. I'm going to discard that layer. And instead of using content-aware fill, I'm going to use the clone stamp. Now, just to keep our non-destructive editing style, I won't clone right onto the background layer. In other words, I won't make a destructive edit. I'll create a brand new pixel layer by going down to the bottom of the layer stack and clicking on that little square with the plus. So now I have a new layer called Layer 1. Let's call it No Boat. With Fisherman. And we're going to create pixels on this layer that has pixels that make it appear as if the boat were not there. Now, I've looked at this for a little while, so I've come up with a technique that works very well, that may not be obvious at first glance. But it's basically to use the clone stamp and clone pixels from an area where the boat does not appear over these pixels where the boat is, so that it makes it appear that the boat's not there. Now, since this image is so symmetric on either side of the sun reflection here, all I have to do is take pixels from the right-hand side of that sun reflection and copy them over to this area on the left-hand side of the reflection. But note that when I do this, because the similarity here is something like a mirror reflection left to right. When I do the cloning, dragging from left to right here, the copy has to go from right to left on the other side. Fortunately, there's a window to do that. The Clone Source tool lets me mirror horizontally, vertically, whatever I like. So I will click on the W, the width. I'm going to do a Command plus to zoom in a little bit. Okay, let me pull it over. I'm going to get the clone stamp tool. I'm going to make it pretty good size and a soft edge brush. I'm going to start my sampling point just on the right side of the circle. So I'll hold down the Option or Alt key and click. I'll move over to where I want to start copying pixels, and then I'm going to click and I'm going to drag to the left and watch what happens to that cross on the right side of the reflection, which is the source point. It's moving opposite the way that I'm dragging the cursor. Why? Because I'm mirroring left to right. Now, it's not covering because my flow is only at 19%. So let's rip that up to 100% and repeat that operation. Okay, so now I'm cloning. And look what a beautiful job it's doing replacing those pixels. Okay, once again, I will display and hide that. Lovely, lovely. And if I do a Command 0 to zoom back out, put the fisherman back in. Now let me highlight the boat with fisherman layer, select my move tool, move that over, set the blend mode to darken again. Beautiful. Let's turn on the no birds and the birds, and we've got it. We have this wonderful composition, and now all the interesting stuff isn't piled up in the middle. Right? I've moved the boat over, I've moved the birds over, and it's all done non-destructively. So I can play with like where those birds are. Maybe I want to try them on the other side of the picture, right? So I do a Command or Control T to transform, flip it left to right, move those birds over to the other side, right? No problem. We can do that. Actually, I like them better on the other side, so I'm going to hit Command or Control Z to undo. Anyway, that's a very effective use of the darken blend mode to improve the composition of this magnificent capture. Hope that made sense. If not, please replay it, do it a couple of times. It'll make sense to you. As always, if you have questions, please send me an email. My email is mrjimchristiansen@gmail.com. Take care.